If you code a machine to maximize outrage, it will. Do that to hundreds of millions and later billions of people, and violence is no longer shocking, but expected. September 10th, 2025, a day that was no different to any other in the United States. On the same day a school shooting was happening in Colorado, a man got shot and killed in Utah. Nothing special happened there. In fact, another 124 people were likely shot and killed that same day. But something was off about the shooting. Charlie Kirk's shooting was no accident. It's the final step of the radicalization pipeline. And no, this is not a conspiracy theory. They have admitted to this. Let me explain. The politically motivated shooting was not even a particularly new phenomenon. These tech companies have been churning out thousands of people like him every day for years. This is the story of the new economics of hate and how a handful of tech billionaires are knowingly reshaping billions of people, how they're generating new batches of extremists and shooters just like Kirk's. They know what they're doing. They're doing it on purpose, and the business of keeping you scrolling is breaking societies. And if you don't think social media is that powerful, well, I know someone who might just disagree with you.
We have to fight with the weapons that apply to the battlefields in which we're engaged, and the most important ones are the social media. And the most important purchase that is going on right now is followers. TikTok. TikTok, number one. And I hope it goes through because it can be consequential. And the other one, what's the other one that's most important? X. That's very good. And, so we have to talk to Elon. He's not an enemy. He's a friend. We should talk to him. Now, if we can get those two things, we get a lot, and I could go on other things, but that's not the point right now. We have to fight the fight.
Back to the start, what we were sold on with social media. Do you remember every tech leader talking about how the product is meant to democratize information, give a voice to the voiceless, bring us together and connect the world? Events like the Arab Spring, protests in Ukraine and Hong Kong were dubbed Facebook revolutions due to the widespread use of Facebook to plan and spread protests. These tools were increasingly seen as a way to empower democracy and support small journalism. However, as time went on, the mask started to slip. We learned more about how these algorithms, whose main goal isn't to achieve world peace or bring us all together, but just to maximize usage time, known as stickiness, for as long as possible. Every second you spend scrolling, every video you watch, every comment you type is a service that is sold to advertisers. You're not the customer, you are the product. You've likely fallen down an online rabbit hole before. One video leads to another, and 2 hours later, you're watching something completely different that you never would have searched for. The algorithm just led you there. Everyone's been through this. It's a universal experience. Now, what if the same algorithm wasn't leading you to a new recipe or a movie review, but literally creating a new reality inside your head? A reality somewhat or completely detached from the real world. One where you're constantly under attack, where there's always a constant conspiracy of elites pushing their own agenda to damage society, and one where anyone around you might attack you, so you better be vigilant. All this in the pursuit of higher profits by ensuring you stay on the platform as long as possible. And how does it do that?
If the thought process that went into building these applications, Facebook being the first of them to really understand it, that thought process was all about how do we consume as much of your time and conscious attention as possible. And that means that we need to sort of give you a little dopamine hit every once in a while because someone liked or commented on a photo or a post or whatever. And that's going to get you to contribute more content, and that's going to get you, more likes and comments. I mean, it's a social validation feedback loop that it's like it's exactly the kind of thing that a hacker like myself would come up with, because you're exploiting a vulnerability in human psychology. And I think that the inventors, creators, and it's me, it's Mark, it's the Kevin Systrom at Instagram, it's all of these people, understood this consciously, and we did it anyway.
The main three culprits are Meta, Alphabet, and Twitter. The latter of which doesn't have nearly the same reach as the first two, but just does it so efficiently, creating the rage bait that people want, that I had to include this too. Okay, but let's take a couple of steps back. If the algorithm is maximizing for usage time, why does it end up amplifying hateful or anger-inducing content? Well, outrage, anger, and fear are the most engaging emotions. They generate more comments, shares, and reactions than positive or neutral content, and therefore more time spent on the platform, even if that time is spent arguing with people in the comments. Therefore, by default, to maximize engagement, they try to make you feel as frustrated and angry as possible, along with a range of other extreme emotions. The most divisive, incendiary, and hateful content is promoted simply because it is economically incentivized to do so. Extremism is promoted because extremism is profitable. And it doesn't need to be intellectually stimulating either. Fake news travels farther and faster than the truth does these days, which makes it an ad monetization magnet. Facebook's own internal slide deck warned our algorithms exploit the human brain's attraction to divisiveness. The executives rejected fixes that reduce engagement. False news online is 70% more likely to be retweeted than the truth, because it is often more novel and emotionally charged. Most people also never see community notes, which makes that feature a bit useless. And this isn't unique to just Facebook or Twitter. That's why YouTube is often labeled as the great radicalizer by journalists. Groups such as Al-Qaeda or Boko Haram have used YouTube for decades to spread their own propaganda. ISIS recruited new members off of Facebook and Twitter too. The TikTok algorithm was the main way that Andrew Tate became the most Googled man in the world, just because his videos caused so much controversy and attracted so much anger. It amplifies people who are looking to be provocative. Aiden Ross, Laura Loomer, Nick Fuentes, Jackson Hinkle, Alves Perez. The last one used his social media presence to gain himself a seat on the European Parliament, whilst people like Marjorie Taylor Greene did the same but with the US Congress. Republican advisor Amanda Carpenter talks about the idea of why Americans love it when Trump gaslights them. By her own standard, we can see social media platforms as the ultimate gaslighting machine. Whilst it doesn't have the same intent, it definitely functions in the same way. It learns what you fear and what you hate, and then systematically builds a personalized feed for you, where your fears are confirmed and the hate is justified 24/7. It isolates you from opposing information or viewpoints and creates a closed loop, where the only truth is the one that keeps you online and keeps you motivated to engage, and therefore the most outraged. Truth no longer exists, or at least it doesn't matter. It has no politics, no morals, no ideology. It doesn't care if what you're watching is true. It only cares if you're engaged. And to keep you engaged, it will serve you rage bait and keep you in a cult-like echo chamber until you explode with rage, often due to things which aren't even true. New York Times columnist Ezra Klein comments on this. He says that the main reason for this is that our identities have become stacked. You no longer just support the Democrats or Republicans, you are black, white, or whatever. Read the Bible, support higher taxes, or anything else. You become the things you support. So any attack on them becomes personal. Traditional sources of identity like clubs, unions, or faith groups have been weakened significantly. So we attach onto an online identity. The algorithm also ensures that you see the worst of your opponent, confirming your active biases. The large issue is that most people who are engulfed in such ideologies rarely start out like that. They slowly fall down the rabbit hole through more and more extreme content. On YouTube, it's very easy for young men especially to get radicalized through gaming content, even just through personal experience from myself and others I've spoken to. You saw with Gamergate response videos back in the day. 6 months later, you sat in hidden forums or Discord servers discussing about the elite cabal of Jews that are trying to replace the white race and how white supremacism is the only way forward, using dog whistles like 1488 or cultural Marxism. That happened some time ago. Gamergate happened in around 2014, but we can see that this still happens now. Once more, just from my own social media, I can see that there's a massive barrage of anti-Semitism on all social media platforms, especially Instagram and Twitter, labeled the Great Noticing. This isn't the fake anti-Semitism linked to being anti-Israel or anti-Zionist, but full on, they control the banks, media, and Hollywood. They deny 11, Holocaust didn't happen type stuff. The Austrian painter was right. Things like that. Even songs now associated with those kinds of videos are gaining traction. But you can see comments referencing these types of anti-Semitic jokes being made. Accounts referencing the need to save Europe are popping up everywhere. On TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter, claiming that Europe is being invaded by black people, Muslims, and especially Indians. They are effectively importing the alt-right conspiracy theory into the mainstream platforms. This is exactly how these social media platforms operate. They find any interest you have and amplify it many times over to keep you hooked, especially with fake news. I mean, just watch this guy's video if you really want to see how the algorithm changes in real time and how it becomes more extreme. Once more, even just from my own experience, I think the type of anti-Indian content has evolved from more moderate content, like videos about scammers based in India, to saying Indians are ugly, to showing bad Indian street food, and now it's just outright racism. That's how the algorithm works. Trump rallies led to alt-right videos, Hillary Clinton speeches led to leftist conspiracy theories. Even things like vegetarianism and jogging led to videos about veganism and ultramarathons respectively. Whatever your interests are, the algorithm will serve you more hardcore content, regardless of the topic. They make critical thinking more difficult for you to do, figuratively turning you into a mindless zombie consumer. Tech designers themselves admit that they limit social media usage at home. They know how dangerous it is to the mind.
And then the diet in your mind, it's kind of like this is what the internet is like, and it's really scary. Imagine a world where if you go to a fast food restaurant, half of the grocery stores in your area get replaced with fast food restaurants. And each time you go to a fast food restaurant, other places disappear and are replaced by fast food restaurants. What would your diet become over time? How much dedicated effort? Now I have to drive 90 kilometers to find a grocery store. This is what the internet does. This is why everyone has a trash diet of the mind.
It used to take a lot of effort to create a hateful movement, but now it's effectively set up for you. The existing social media platforms provide the infrastructure for you. They find your recruiters. They A/B test your messaging. They build the echo chambers that indoctrinate your followers. They even help you organize your real-world actions. The threat is overblown into an existential crisis, often one which is fueled entirely by fake, cherry-picked, and downright fabricated news.
When this South African YouTuber with 3.92 million subscribers came to the UK, he had to use AI to edit the hate in. What do I mean? Here's his actual interaction with his fan. Notice the smile, notice the banter, notice the name of the shops in the English language. And here's the picture to go with it. Then here is what he uploaded. Notice the added face mask and the foreign text on the shops.
I think where this gets really dangerous is when you start to realize just how much of what fuels this extremism is just fake news. Not just misinformation, but purposely created disinformation. To give just a few examples, this is Lawrence Fox, right-wing so-called political activist. I honestly don't know how to describe this guy, apart from he loves being anti-woke. He also claims that he was radicalized from YouTube videos, so take from that what you will. Out of the sea of disinformation he's involved in, I just want to highlight this one tweet. Here, Fox makes the claim that the mayor of London is Muslim, the mayor of Birmingham is Muslim, Leeds, Blackburn, Sheffield, Oxford, Luton, Oldham, and Rochdale. He then went on to make some other claims about Islam taking over, and how no one has ever been given the opportunity to vote for this. Now, to start off with this, he's just wrong. Just plain wrong. As mentioned by journalist Dilly Hussain, the mayors of Birmingham, Leeds, Sheffield, and Rochdale are not Muslim. In fact, there are about 27 mayors in the UK, including 14 metro mayors listed here. Do you want to have a guess how many of these are Muslim? 2. Sadiq Khan and Lutfur Rahman. Everyone else is either a non-Muslim, as mentioned earlier, or a civic mayor, which means that a mayor that has no real power and is just ceremonial. That means that whilst he incorrectly mentioned Birmingham, Leeds, Sheffield, and Rochdale, and misled people about Blackburn, Oxford, Luton, and Oldham, he failed to mention that all of these also don't have Muslim mayors, which is what we in the industry call cherry picking. Amongst all the other disinformation, he also said that 63% of Muslims do not work, which is so easily debunkable. It's 6.7% by the way, not 63%. Still higher than the national average by 2.3 points, but off by over 56. I'm not going to mention every single thing he said wrong in this one tweet, let alone his entire Twitter feed. But why do I mention this? Well, this one tweet that was filled with nothing but lies managed to reach over 20 million people. The owner of the platform, world's richest man, Elon Musk, also chimed in by saying, wow, increasing visibility to the post with an extra 4 million views. So that's more than 20 million people who saw this blatantly false tweet made up of lies, who likely didn't check if this was true. Because whilst it took him 2 minutes, maybe 3, to put that together, it took me over 45 minutes to fact check that. Over 20 million people saw that, probably thinking, wow, these Muslims sure really are taking over. I don't like this Muslim business. This is at the heart of the problem. It takes 60 seconds to debunk a 10-second lie. A lie is halfway across the world before the truth even has its trousers on. It takes so much longer to disprove fake news than it is to make it. Plus, as we mentioned earlier, it's far less likely to get shared. This claim is a similar idea to what Lawrence Fox mentioned. I see this everywhere. It was originally shared by the far-right Portuguese party Chega, but it's simply not true. For starters, 1/3 of all refugees are from Ukraine or Venezuela, so automatically that nullifies the 85% claim. Additionally, 4 out of the 7 countries that take the most refugees are Muslim majority: Turkey, Iran, Pakistan, and Chad. So it's great to be able to now look at this picture and know it's wrong. But how easy was it to send that picture compared to looking up if it really is true? And who's really going that far to fact check that? In another example, infamous anti-immigration and especially anti-Muslim figure Tommy Robinson, whose real name is Stephen Yaxley Lennon, has a long history of such posts. Robinson/Yaxley Lennon had spent the entire week after the Southport stabbings tweeting about the killer, saying that there was a cover-up and basically saying that it was guaranteed that the attacker was Muslim, but that they are lying to you because it didn't fit their agenda. He also said that the state knew who the perpetrator was but wouldn't release his identity because, again, it wouldn't fit their narrative. The police and government were both supposedly gaslighting us. You see, the online narrative was that the perpetrator was a Muslim asylum seeker called Ali Al-Shakat, who arrived on a small boat the year prior. That rumor was spread by a fake news account called Channel 3 Now. An anti-immigrant and anti-Muslim Twitter account called Europe Invasion also made that claim, and it effectively set the agenda with the 4 million views they got. Even Andrew Tate chimed in and claimed this. Nigel Farage actually cited him as a source for why he would amplify these rumours.
But where do you think he was getting his information from? This sitting member of Parliament, this elected MP, where do you think this broadcaster, this self-styled journalist, where do you think he was getting his information from? Where do you think he turns to when he wants to get a really clear steer on what's actually going on in Britain?
This is the problem, isn't it? One of the reasons the Southport riots were as bad as they were is we weren't told the truth. There were stories online from some very prominent folks with big followings, Andrew Tate, etc.
Whoa! What? Andrew Tate?
Farage also posted a video speculating whether the truth is being hidden from us, and that the reports suggest that the attacker was known to security services. Farage had no such reports, but it turns out his actual source was...
And of course, one is left with the other question of where the idea to target these hotels came from, why the idea to target hotels containing completely innocent human beings, children included, of course, some of whom witnessed rioters drawing their fingers across their throat in a throat-cutting gesture while they were cowering in buildings that were already on fire. Where on earth would the people currently being convicted of rioting got the idea that targeting these hotels would be a good plan?
We've no idea who some of these people are. We've no idea whether some of these might be ISIS.
That was Farage himself, filming himself in 2020 at a hotel where asylum seekers were being accommodated. I mean, you know, it's a wonderful rhetorical tactic, isn't it? I have no idea whether that man over there might be a paedophile. I'm just asking questions. I've no idea whether that woman over there might be a terrorist. I'm just asking questions. But the kind of people setting fire to bins and hotels and attacking police officers receive a very different message, don't they, from that kind of rhetoric.
In reality, the killer had been a Cardiff-born Christian boy. He was called Axel Rudakubana. But why let the truth get in the way of a good false narrative? So why do I raise this point? Well, at the point that Robinson/Yaxley Lennon had started posting, no one had been speaking about the identity of the killer for good reason. No one actually knew who he was since he was a minor. This information vacuum led to his posts being viewed a staggering 580 million times. Again, he was just spreading fake news to over 500 million people over that week, amplified by interactions with Elon Musk. Twitter was still showing Ali al-Shakati as trending in the sidebar days after that name was debunked. This led to riots which targeted Muslims and mosques and burned asylum centers and hotels, even though the attacker had neither been a Muslim nor an asylum seeker.
Why did he choose to lie about a Muslim asylum seeker if he's not trying to incite hatred of Muslim asylum seekers?
Because that was the news at the time.
No, it wasn't.
It was. It was sort of all round everywhere on...
It was on racist social media accounts. It wasn't anywhere else. And I think Nigel Farage may have contributed very deliberately to the confusion. But you chose, did you, to believe it, despite there being no evidence? I didn't. Why would you do that?
At the time, yeah.
Why do you think you did that?
I don't know. You know, it's social media. I agree that there is a big problem with social media everywhere.
And where does Tommy Robinson do most of his work? Where does he do?
It's on X.
What?
It's on X, social media.
So that's where the big problem is.
Yeah, but what?
But you're here to tell me he's not part of it.
Well, he hasn't told everyone to go out and loot shops and riot.
No, but he's told people that 3 little girls were murdered by a Muslim asylum seeker, and lo and behold, people are looting shops and rioting and kicking in the doors of Muslims. You don't think there's any link at all there, Aaron?
Even the parents of the girls themselves said they wanted the riots to stop, as the riots had nothing to do with the girls and were focused on attacking Muslims and refugees. Again, this is the problem. These guys clearly don't care about crime or the perpetrators. They just want to attack Asians, black people, Muslims, and immigrants. Especially Tommy Robinson/Stephen Yaxley Lennon. They can just say stuff. The attacker is a Muslim asylum seeker, or this black man is a paedophile with no proof. It goes viral, their lives are ruined, and it's all a lie. Tommy Robinson/Stephen Yaxley Lennon. British patriot who supported an Israeli team when they played against a British team. British patriot who set up the EDL with an Israeli Mossad agent called Paul Ray, and later took on former Israeli soldier Roberta Moore to set up the organization.
Jonathan Hoffman is a former vice chair of the Zionist Federation. Members of the Racist English Defense League, or EDL, attended a demonstration that Hoffman helped organize. He is photographed alongside Roberta Moore, the founder of the EDL's Jewish division. She will later express her admiration for Anders Breivik, the neo-Nazi who murdered 77 people in Norway.
When Roberta Moore was asked if the EDL was exploiting the Zionist movement, she replied, "If anything, we are exploiting them." On the 28th of February 2013, the English Defence League, as registered on Companies House, was changed. The name of the organisation became the Jewish Defence League, JDL UK. It's important to remember that the JDL is designated as a terrorist organisation by the US government. The only other time the English Defence League was registered on Companies House was by Tommy Robinson's personal assistant, Helen Gower. When she registered the organization, the name was the English and Jewish Defense League. So the question has to be asked here. Was Tommy Robinson's English Defense League founded to be an offshoot of the Zionist terrorist organization, the JDL?
Could Tommy Robinson be an agent for Israel, spreading the propaganda and promoting their interests instead of British interests? No, that can't be true. If it were, he'd have to be getting paid £10,000 a month by a Zionist billionaire. He'd have large donations, including over $60,000 in legal fees and demonstrations paid for by a Zionist organization. He would have to do something outrageous, like say he'd fight on the front lines for Israel, despite not doing the same for the UK. If it really was an Israeli agent, he'd probably be paid by the Israeli government themselves to come to Israel and be the propaganda mouthpiece, even though the pro-Israel UK-based Jewish organizations were completely against it. Him and the far right being paid off by Israel. What a silly idea. Okay, this is all a story for another time. To summarize, these people don't care about stopping crimes. They just hate it when a brown or black person does it. Also, Tommy Robinson is almost definitely an Israeli agent. This is not a European or Western problem. This problem is literally global. If a Westerner were to think of a tolerant, peaceful, cohesive, friendly people, you'd probably instinctively think of Japan. What if I said that everything I mentioned is also happening there?
To this day, anytime anything bad happens, you'll immediately see people online speculating that the culprit must have been a Korean. Like, I get Japanese YouTube comments informing me that some of the most embarrassing people I've covered are actually secretly Korean. Yeah, it's basically to the point where the 3 worst things you can be called on the Japanese internet are Korean, bald, and Chinese. And that last one is big. Right now, anti-Chinese content is doing numbers on the Japanese internet. The most popular genre is Chinese tourist abusing deer videos.
Just imagine replacing the term Korean or Chinese with Muslim, Indian, or asylum seeker, and you're in Europe.
If that makes you go, huh? I should explain. There's this park in a city called Nara where there are hundreds of wild deer that you can pet and feed, and right now, it's filled with tourists, even more than usual, mainly Chinese. But yeah, this video has a girl labeled Stupid Chinese who's apparently kicking a deer in the head. Now, who would do that? Who would kick a deer? Wait. She didn't kick the deer. She didn't make contact. These are 2 different pictures. Yeah, this YouTuber just did a lazy Photoshop job to make it look like the Chinese girl was kicking the deer when she wasn't. This is the most popular video in the genre with 2 million views, and I didn't see a single comment calling this out. Here is his first big scoop. He's caught a Chinese tourist red-handed, or should I say red-footed, kicking a deer like a soccer ball. And when he says that, this is what he means? A guy doing shake-a-paw with a deer? The guy apologized to Hezuma 11 times. And honestly, the deer didn't even seem phased in the first place. He was hard chillin'. But anyways, these videos are very well received. The majority of Japanese commenters agree with Hezuma, and they all use this to say Chinese people should be kicked out of Japan. The police arrive, and they immediately see through Hezuma's lies. They order him to apologize and delete his footage. Instead, he uploads the footage online, which resulted in the Chinese couple suing him for defamation. Yeah, he eventually had to delete the video, but Hezuma's plan was working. He was getting a lot of attention, and he knew just how angry people could get when it came to deer. He remembered this incident from 2020 where someone bragged about doing something absolutely vile to a deer. Seriously, what kind of psychopath would do this? Oh, it was Hezuma himself. This happened in 2023. Hezuma soon realized that his talent for screaming at people was wasted on homeless people and children. He could get way more views if he just screamed at tourists. Not only that, maybe he could even exploit his image as the deer protector to get on Nara City Council. There was just one tiny little problem. The deer don't need protecting. Don't take it from me, here's Nara's Parks Department saying they don't have any reports of tourists hitting deer, and more tourists get injured by deer than vice versa.
Now, what about faking videos to get fake outrage against the minority? This isn't to show that Japanese people are racist or whatever, but to show you how social media amplifies the worst aspects of people's psychology. If your country is struggling, the easiest and most common pathway to take is to scapegoat the weakest in society. Whether that's Mexicans and Latin Americans in the US, Muslims, Africans and asylum seekers in Europe, Chinese and Koreans in Japan, and also Japanese people in China, Afghans and Arabs in Turkey, even sub-Saharan Africans in North Africa, or Indians literally anywhere. With AI-generated content becoming more and more realistic, it's only a matter of time before there are hordes of fake videos about black people, immigrants, Muslims, and Indians just doing the most heinous of crimes. All fake and all being spread on social media. But in reality, it's all AI generated. I remember that Algerian female boxer. She was shouted out by all the right-wing influencers because it was woke gone wrong and now they've got men beating women. She was biological female, as in born female. People like Ted Cruz, Elon Musk, J.K. Rowling, and Joe Rogan were very passionate about it. Again, all unsubstantiated, but the algorithm boosted it for hundreds of millions of followers. The reason I say that this is where it gets dangerous is that we've already established that due to the extreme nature of this algorithm plus the echo chamber effect, it can essentially rewrite what reality is for anyone who's unfortunate enough to be stuck in it. This added layer of disinformation basically means that these extreme echo chambers construct an entirely new reality detached from facts and statistics, but what they feel is correct, purely just from some online accounts creating fake news.
It was a post that was going around social media, which had a quote alongside of Sadiq Khan saying that he quoted that they are trialling the law in 3 of London's boroughs right now.
Yeah,
and they will roll it out in the remaining 30 years.
What research did you do into that social media post?
It was on the Daily Mail.
No, but what checks did you do on it?
Well, how can you check something when?
Right, do you want me to show you?
Okay, you go ahead.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you a question, which I promise you isn't patronising. But do you know what Reuters is?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so an internationally respected news organisation.
Yep.
So while I've never heard this claim about Sadiq Khan before. I'm 99.999% confident that it's complete rollicks, right? And the only time I ever hear things like this is when people tell me that Nigel Farage defends British values, and I push them for some proof. I push for some proof or some evidence or some explanation. And you tell me that, for example, Sadiq Khan, I don't know what this has got to do with Nigel Farage, but hang on, because I'm just teaching you how to do fact checks. All right? So you tell me that the Mayor of London wants Sharia law to be imposed in London, and you mention a social media meme or quote, and I can find while talking to you, this isn't the BBC, I've done it all myself while talking to you. In fact, people watching on YouTube will be able to watch the process of me just simply Googling a few of the words you've said in this conversation. And up pops Reuters from July the 1st, 2020, saying, fact check, the Mayor of London did not say Sharia law is being imposed in London. Let me read some of it to you.
Since Elon Musk acquired Twitter and effectively removed the content moderation team, Tommy Robinson / Stephen Yasser-Ledin's average Twitter views have doubled from 380,000 to 850,000 daily. NBC News found over 150 verified premium accounts posting Nazi content, with 7 popular posts accumulating over 4.5 million views in a single week. Facebook is very aware of the damage it's doing, how its algorithm was amplifying hate speech, misinformation, and extremism, and acknowledged that Instagram had a negative impact on the mental health of teenage girls. It also knew that it was being used to literally fan ethnic violence in countries like Ethiopia and Myanmar. Zuckerberg claimed that they were removing over 90% of hate speech when speaking to politicians, but their own internal documents said that the real figure was closer to 3.5%. Facebook's 2018 algorithm change ended up amplifying harmful and misinformative content. It ended up rewarding negativity according to its own internal research. And likely in a bid to appease President Trump, Zuckerberg went further and scrapped all fact checkers on Facebook completely and changed its hate speech policy. Under the new policy, it would be permissible to call immigrants trash, refer to women as property, or say I'm a proud racist. That would not be hate speech. Post-Musk Twitter also saw a 50% jump of weekly hate speech posts, as he dismantled the content moderation policy and fired 80% of the team. In reality, this had nothing to do with free speech and was just done to appease the right wing. As many people put it, he spent $44 billion to buy the United States government. Okay, we've covered how these platforms are effectively cannibalizing our social bonds, all in the pursuit of never-ending profits. That's the demand of hate. But most people don't know that there's an entire marketplace set up to supply hate. Supply and demand, we have a market. Ever since Twitter introduced ad revenue sharing, creators started realizing that there was money to be made by getting impressions. So if Twitter basically got rid of their content moderation team, and the money creators earn is directly linked to how many views they get, and we've already covered that posts get more views and engagement if they post provocative and fake content, then that just creates a direct incentive for people to create fake news and posts that garner rage to gain more money. Let's put a pin in that for now. Shortly after Twitter started going crazy with racism, I also started noticing similar content rising on Instagram and garnering crazy numbers. They had 3 main targets: Indians, Muslims, and Jews. Most of them either had a name or description related to the need to save Europe, or that Europe had fallen, nostalgic videos about Europe's past. They posted videos where black and brown people were causing trouble on the streets, Jews doing Jew stuff like that. This was present on both Twitter as well as Instagram. Here were the general messages. Multiculturalism was a Jewish plot to destroy the West. Indians, Muslims, and Africans are the tool which are incompatible with the West, and Jews are importing millions of them to change the demography of European towns and cities. If you've not encountered this before, it's because this is a far-right fringe conspiracy theory called the Great Replacement Theory. It was confined to the shadowy edges of the internet. It's anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, racism, and white supremacy all wrapped up together. It's complete BS. I'm not going to waste my time debunking it. Sean already did a very good job doing so you can watch the video. But back to these accounts. What people slowly notice as they follow these Save Europe, anti-immigration, and sometimes self-described white supremacist accounts is that a lot of them were created by non-white people, usually by Indians for some reason. Account after account, people are seeing them slip up and mention they're Indian, or mention something to do with Hinduism, or accidentally post something that they shouldn't have on their alt-right account. Or just post so many posts about India and Hinduism that they just expose themselves. No Israeli, American, or any other white person cares half as much to be posting 24/7 about these domestic issues. And people have started noticing too. It's become a known joke that the average white supremacist, anti-black or anti-Muslim account is actually just an Indian. And this is by no means a purely Indian problem. Some of these accounts, like the clearly race-baiting Radio Genoa, a 1.2 million follower account trying to pass off as an Italian, is actually Cambodian. Ian Miles Chong, the biggest Elon Musk worshipper, and someone who purely talks about immigration and domestic issues in Europe and America from a right-wing perspective, is Malaysian. I find this particularly interesting. Malaysia is one of the best examples of people of different races, cultures, and religions living together peacefully and harmoniously. There are other examples from places like the Philippines, Pakistan, Thailand, and other South or Southeast Asian countries. But to finish the question, why are so many people from developing nations posting far-right content about what it's like to live in Europe, all to provoke division to an audience halfway across the world? Well, as we said, they're just trying to get some engagement. Virality brings cash, and these people tend to come from nations where their salaries are quite low, such as India or Southeast Asia, incentivizing them to spam more of these posts. Only 12% of Indian content creators make enough from social media to make it their primary source of income, putting more pressure to produce viral content.
If you're a user of social media, and especially if you're a user of Elon Musk's X, you've probably noticed a lot of right-wing rubbish clogging up your feed. The grimmest kind of anti-black racism, unashamed Islamophobia, tales of a broken and empty London, and endless posts trying to push white supremacy.
Exile people, we will not be moved. Secure our borders.
Interesting combination there of West Country and Northern Irish. And now that right-wing slop may look cheap, but it's actually a very lucrative business. And the Bureau of Investigative Journalism, along with the Institute for Strategic Dialogue and The Times, has now traced some of the accounts publishing it back to a single wealthy influencer based in Sri Lanka. Geetha Suripura claims to have made $300,000 running Facebook pages that push racist, Islamophobic, and anti-migrant posts aimed at British audiences. In an interview, he told TBIJ that he targets old people because, quote, they're the ones who don't like immigrants. And he teaches others how to do the same. One post, which used this sample format, received 50,000 views by turning a photo of mostly black men in an overcrowded boat off the coast of Italy into a 15-second video with melancholy background music. The image text reads, quote, share if you want Britain to put its own people before foreigners looking for handouts. The page is run by Suryapura and his students, many of which have generic patriotic names, also post content made with a new generation of AI video tools, which allow users to create videos using written prompts. In one video, Suryapura tells his students that AI-generated videos can help political content go viral up to 10 times faster.
During the 2016 election, these Macedonian teens made over 100 times the average wage in Macedonia by posting fake news across 100 pro-Trump websites and over 200 fake Facebook accounts, all through Google AdSense. There are also deeper underlying reasons, such as inferiority complexes, often lingering from post-colonial trauma, which makes them look up to colonizers and white people in general, such as Europeans, Israelis, or white Americans. This complex makes them want to be like them and therefore hate on other races in a bid to make Europeans think, hey, we're not like these other inferior races, we're Aryan. But again, that's the story for another time. Another reason these people can post so much fake news stuff is for their ideological preferences, even if it means that they don't get paid much, such as on Instagram. In other words, they do it for the love of the game. One of the reasons many Indian accounts will pretend to be Israeli is because, in addition to the inferiority complex mentioned, they feel like they have a shared enemy in Islam with Israel with the Palestinians, and India with Pakistan. That's why they can go out of their way to post anti-Muslim content. That's why there are more anti-Muslim posts coming from India than the rest of the world combined. I mentioned earlier that I'll get onto the examples from other countries. This is where it gets bad. What people don't realize is that there are entire state state-backed operations being played on social media platforms, specifically to influence public support, and it's working. In the Philippines, aka Patient Zero, these troll farms are used to harass journalists and critics of the regime. The troll for hire market especially lightens up around election time, disguised as political marketing. These often include full-time staff who are paid for posts and quotas across all the major social media apps. If you pause to read, you'll see that most people live in a country that operates these. In the 2022 election, for example, $30 million was paid directly to influencers participating in disinformation campaigns. This may not sound like a lot, but bear in mind that the Philippines' GDP per capita is a mere $4.3 thousand compared to the United States' $89,000, over 20 times smaller. Malaysian cotton farms have even been hired by China in order to target and influence Taiwanese citizens. In India, Prime Minister Modi's bot accounts threaten and harass journalists critiquing the BJP's anti-Muslim policies. China and Russia both also use bots and censorship to suppress popular social and political movements, such as Instagram agreeing to block Alexei Navalny's websites from showing, who was Putin's biggest critic. The ruling party in India, the ultra-Hindu nationalist Bharat Janata Party, or BJP, operates a massive and highly organized network of online supporters, often referred to as the BJP IT cell or its digital army. This network is dedicated to promoting the party's agenda, attacking political rivals and spreading propaganda and disinformation through social media. During the 2019 election, for example, the BJP recruited over 900,000 volunteers to create WhatsApp groups to spread campaign messages and misinformation. This is especially worrying as in India, which has 400 million WhatsApp users, over half of people report getting their news from WhatsApp. It's a massive catalyst for the spread of fake news, as it is very easy to forward messages to hundreds of people or groups at once, and it's basically impossible for the platform to fact check the results due to the end-to-end encryption. The shocking result is that Microsoft estimates that 2/3 of Indians encountered fake news online ahead of the 2019 election. That's more than the entire population of the United States. An investigation revealed how Indian websites that publish anti-Muslim disinformation are being directly funded by Google's AdSense program. Websites promoting debunked conspiracy theories like flood jihad, which falsely blame Muslims for causing deadly floods, were found to be running Google ads, earning an estimated $10 to $20 for every 1,000 views. Bellingcat went further and looked for 17 debunked conspiracy theories that all revolved around Islam or Muslims. These were all debunked fake news. They found that this small selection of 17 fake news spreads were repeated on 91 active articles on 51 unique websites, of which almost 80% were monetized. Myanmar's 2025 earthquakes led to false images on Facebook, which is very often used by its military to spread fake news against the Rohingya minority in the West. The Buddhist Nationalist Government of Myanmar, aka Burma, also had units of military officers, up to 700 officers in a unit, working on troll farms. These units spread so much disinformation about the Rohingya minority, spreading fake news about supposedly impending Rohingya jihadi attacks that never materialized. They also operated as a way to recruit more soldiers into the military and raise funds from users. So they were incentivized to spread as much shocking and fake news as possible to gain more views. Actors and militias in Brazil, Cambodia, and Vietnam also spread disinformation about international conflict and even domestic issues to capitalize on YouTube's monetization policy. These methods are insanely effective. 20% of all accounts that mentioned the Philippines' Duterte were bots. Yet he still commanded a 91% approval rating, largely thanks to those accounts. I've picked just some examples from a few Southeast Asian nations, which most people don't even know about how rampant they are due to their population sizes, authoritarian nature, and low wages, giving a higher financial incentive to do this. There are genuinely hundreds of more examples I could go through. The University of Oxford's Internet Institute claims foreign influence operations are attributed to 7 main countries. The institute has also tracked rapid growth of state-aligned and mercenary troll operations, tripling in just 2 years. That means over 80 countries were participating in paid networks to harass users and journalists, manipulate trends, and flood feeds with their own narratives. The social media companies provide the demand, and the creators provide the supply, creating the marketplace for attention, which ends up finding equilibrium and turning into the marketplace of hate. In the end, it's all a game with your emotions, your imagination, your thinking, turning you into a hateful, conspiratorial, angry person who has no trust in anyone outside your group, religion, nationality, or race. Elon Musk has effectively curated his entire platform to ensure that rage-bait content thrives by allowing creators to monetize attention. This is where we start covering the real-life impact of social media's influence and radicalization on us. There are so many cases of fake news being rife and actually influencing public opinion. In America, only 46% of people disagreed with the statement, "A group of Satan-worshipping elites who run a child sex ring are trying to control our politicians and media," also known as the QAnon theory. Let me repeat that. Less than half of Americans disagreed. In the UK, the grooming gang story has been pushed so often by bad actors to show that Muslims and Pakistanis especially are more prone to sexually abusing or raping kids. In reality, this is all completely false. People like Tommy Robinson, who constantly use the term Muslim or Pakistani grooming gangs, know what they're doing. The same can be said about the Trojan horse affair. Now people think that Muslims in Birmingham are trying to infiltrate the school system to spread their Islamist ideology. In reality, it was all built on a complete hoax with no basis at all. Once more, story for another time.
In June of 2010, back when Tommy was top shag of the EDL, his close friend Richard Price was convicted of possessing crack cocaine, and 4 indecent images of children that he downloaded from the onlines. Oh wait, sorry, I mean, Tommy campaigned with other EDL members to win justice for Richard Price. He supported him even after he admitted that he was charged with creating the images. Here's a post from the EDL at the time telling everyone that it was because he bought a second-hand computer. It wasn't, and that, also, the images weren't even that bad. Now look, I know what you're saying, and I agree. It was a one-off, a glitch in the matrix. If the EDL was actually rife with criminals, druggies, and rapists, that means they'd be no different to the people they purport to stand against. In 2018, senior EDL member Lee McMillan was jailed for 17 years for grooming a 10-year-old girl in the mid-90s. He would buy her cigarettes and alcohol, then assault her. His victim reports that he would tell her that she mustn't tell her mum because she'd be really upset. He assaulted her approximately 100 times over 5 years. That's not all either. On screen now is a list of EDL members and their splinter organisations that have been exposed as being sex offenders. Now, I would love to also show you instances of Tommy condemning these people and saying that there's no place for them in the EDL, but there isn't one. Tommy hasn't so much as whispered their names. That's 66 extra examples for those of you that can be asked to go through and look up the individual examples. If you want more, here's an article from Hope Not Hate that gives similar evidence, a not insubstantial amount of it coming from when Tommy was the leader of the EDL. If you are a supporter of Thomas Robinson, doesn't it feel weird that he's not even willing to post a single tweet to condemn these people? Doesn't it seem weird that he didn't, at any point, introduce basic checks before allowing people to join the EDL? Doesn't it feel weird that he only seems to have an issue with it when it's an immigrant?
Moving on. Half of Swedes believe that refugees are more likely to blame for crimes, whereas the data doesn't really support that. In China, following a rise of anti-Japanese sentiment on Chinese social media, which included a spamming of "I really hope the Japanese die" 25 times on one Weibo post. There was a string of anti-Japanese stabbings, including the stabbing of a 10-year-old Japanese boy in Shenzhen. Anti-Muslim riots in Sri Lanka, done by Buddhist nationals, were incited due to misinformation spread on, you guessed it, Facebook. In Brazil, a massive disinformation campaign was spread on Brazil's 120 million WhatsApp users, who use it as their main news source, using doctored and fabricated images to smear the left-wing candidate Fernando Haddad. It was bankrolled by a conservative business lobby who spent millions on it, all in order to influence and control the election. We have to keep impartial. Look at the data and make an assessment regardless of our own personal views. But keeping impartial doesn't mean practicing demonstrative neutrality, which is effectively being neutral for the sake of being neutral. If we see an issue being more widespread amongst one side, like the left or right, we need to call it out in good faith, trying to reach a common goal. The data here clearly shows this issue is not equal between left and right. The reality is that conservative audiences concentrate attention and trust in fewer, purely conservative sources. Liberal audiences spread attention more broadly. The algorithm itself shows far-right people more extreme content compared to centrist and far-left. Whether that's a chicken and the egg thing is unknown. Researchers at Princeton and NYU found that conservatives were more likely to spread misinformation or fake news than liberals. This was also replicated by researchers at Oxford. As we've seen, sharing fake news is a very common and strong precursor to falling down the misinformation and extremism rabbit hole. This leads to conservatives being far more likely to be in an enclosed echo chamber, and therefore more likely to get radicalized compared to liberals or leftists. Another study found that the 20% most conservative social media users were responsible for 62% of visits to fake news websites in 2016. This leads to what Harvard professor Yochai Benkler calls a highly asymmetric media ecosystem, with a tightly integrated insular right-wing and the rest of the media ecosystem. It's not right-wing radicals versus left-wing radicals. It's right-wing radicals versus anyone who isn't a right-wing radical. Right-wingers are less likely to trust many outlets and hold stronger opinions in their news sources. This may not be a problem if their rhetoric was somewhat neutral or moderate, but you know Fox News. If the rhetoric alone wasn't enough, Fox News produced over 50% more false statements than MSNBC and more than twice that of CNN. So it's clear from just looking at the data that this problem is far more common with the right wing than the left, or liberals. Media polarization is nothing new. I honestly think that the CNN and Fox News rivalry has been one of the most damaging to the United States. This isn't to say that this problem didn't exist before social media, because it absolutely did. Just take a look at my video about America's impending civil war, and you'll know just how many decades this problem has been getting worse for. Even historically, Nazi propaganda, through radio and film, spread anti-Semitic sentiment and swayed public opinion. Use of the radio was also central in the 1994 Rwandan genocide, where Hutu extremists used radio stations to incite violence against the Tutsis. Approximately 10% of the 800,000 killings were potentially linked to radio broadcasts. What I am saying is that not only is social media a large reason for our social dysfunction, but it's an increasingly hostile and progressively severe radicalizing source of propaganda. I myself have come across a couple of far-right accounts that are actively recruiting real-life actors to try and pursue violent actions. This was all completely organically, and I'm not even right-wing. To portray just how worldwide this extremism is, we can see that following the 2016 Filipino elections, where the inflammatory and controversial Robert Duterte was running, there was a real-life impact on how actual people became more toxic and hateful after being exposed to online trolls accounts. Let me say that again. After analyzing hundreds of millions of Facebook comments, people became more hateful, spiteful, and toxic just from being exposed to troll accounts, which are either botted and not real, or are being paid for and therefore manufactured and not really real either. It's called the spillover effect, and it is insane. This is not just a Filipino problem. 88% of US extremists use social media for radicalization in 2016. 64% of Facebook extremist group joins came from platform recommendations. Social media radicalized nearly 90% of US extremists by 2016, up from virtually zero in 2005. 68% of lone actor extremists use social media for radicalization. Far-right extremists showed the highest rates of social media radicalization at 42.76%. Far-right violence increased 320% in areas with high social media penetration. 36% of YouTube users encountered problematic recommendations, with right-wing users being 25% more likely to encounter extreme content compared to left-wing and centrist users. The documentary The Rise and Fall of Telegram meticulously traced how Telegram became a hub for neo-Nazi groups that actively groomed and instructed individuals who went on to commit active white supremacist terrorism. Facebook removes only 2% of hate speech content. For the past 31 years, the CIA has tracked markers to predict political instability. Out of 38 social, economic, and political variables, including poverty, corruption, and inequality, the most important indicator was the Polity Index, with the anocracy zone being the place of greatest danger. Neither democracy nor autocracy, but somewhere in between. All of this was after studying hundreds of countries over a century. Anocracies with democratic features, aka partial democracies, were twice as likely as autocracies to experience political instability or civil war, and 3 times more likely than democracies. It effectively gets the worst of both worlds. On a scale of -10 to 10, the United States became an anocracy for the first time after the January 6th attack, achieving a score of 5 for the first time in almost 230 years. Let me repeat this again. The US has not been this authoritarian since the 18th century. The second most important factor was factionalism, such as when identity-based parties are inflexible and rigid. When politics moves from being based on ideology, such as small state higher taxes foreign policy, to being based on identity, such as race, religion, and ethnicity, the global social scene is doing pretty badly on both of these factors. Just as a small example, a white lady in Minnesota saw a black autistic 5-year-old going through her bag, to which she started calling him the N-word, a child, multiple times. Okay, so racists exist. What's new? She then went on to raise almost $1 million on her GoFundMe. This isn't about stats, expert opinions, or anything like that. This is just me thinking this wouldn't have happened 5 or 10 years ago. A woman calls a child the N-word multiple times and then raises a nice almost $1 million. Okay, so now we have established a digital cult, a fabricated fake echo chamber where the group's identity is forged in opposition to a dehumanized enemy. But this is still online. Posts, likes, shares, comments. How does this translate to physical violence? How does a keyboard warrior become an actual warrior or an active shooter? The answer lies in a concept called dangerous speech. It's not a direct order to kill. It's something much more subtle and far more insidious. Within these echo chambers, a narrative is built, piece by piece, post by post. The other, whether a political opponent, a religious minority, or another ethnic group, is framed not just as wrong, but as an existential crisis. This isn't just a theory. It's happened time and time again. The internet is the primary tool of radicalization or violence in so many cases. In the US, the 2022 Buffalo supermarket shooter was heavily influenced by 4chan message boards, with the New York Attorney General confirming he was radicalized online. The Boston Marathon bomber, the 2023 California shooter, 2023 Jacksonville, Florida shooter. These are just a handful of examples of the shooters that were radicalized online. The most blatant example of American violence being instigated by social media is the January 6th insurrection by Donald Trump. Leaked internal documents from Facebook, aka the Facebook Papers, revealed that the company's own employees alerted management in the months leading up to the attack. Despite these internal warnings, Facebook began rolling back many of the safety measures it had implemented for the 2020 election, allowing extremist groups to use the platforms to organize. They could mobilize the support for the Stop the Steal rally that preceded the riot. House committee investigations revealed extensive use of social media platforms for tactical planning and organization. They found that Trump's "will be wild" tweet sparked immediate planning across multiple platforms. January 6th attackers used more than 15 social media platforms for coordination, including coordinating weapons stockpiles and operational planning. The platforms modified policies to avoid penalizing conservative voices out of fear of backlash. One source accurately predicted just 1 month before the election that if the election were to be contested, fake news could escalate the contest, perhaps to violence. India is also really bad for this. As mentioned earlier, since WhatsApp usage is really high there, where zero content regulation and the ability for someone to spread fake news to hundreds of people with one click, misinformation can get out of hand really quickly. Indians' hatred for their main rival Pakistan, along with rising Hindu nationalism, has created a country where Muslims are entering stage 9 of 10 on the genocide scale in India, largely thanks to social media, especially Facebook and WhatsApp. Fake news spread about Muslims purposely spreading COVID in 2020 led to calls of economic boycotts of Muslim businesses all across India. A Hindu content creator called Mohit Yadav would post videos encouraging attacks against Muslims. He also garnered over 200,000 subscribers on YouTube and over 150,000 on Facebook and Instagram. A fake video depicting a child being kidnapped went viral on WhatsApp. This single rumor cascade led to mob violence that killed at least 24 people. Between mid-2017 and 18, 33 people were killed and at least 99 injured in 69 reported attacks fueled by such WhatsApp messages. Far-right fake news platforms like Op India spread disinformation that pushes the narrative of Hindus being victims and Muslims being murderers and terrorists. In Brazil, a false rumor accusing a woman of kidnapping babies for black magic spread when a Facebook news page endorsed it, leading to a lynching of that woman that resulted in her death. Other rumors about kidnappers in Brazil spread through local WhatsApp groups, leading to attacks on falsely accused individuals. One teenager who was killed by the police had rumors spread about him on social media with fabricated photos and texts showing he was a drug dealer. His mother said that the defamation was like a second death for her son. Moving over to a clear example in the UK. We already covered the fake news that came after the Southport stabbings in 2024, with the fake Muslim name having reached a potential 1.7 billion people. This all apparently started when a woman spread that name around, claiming it was someone from Southport who told her that information, clearly unverified, after which she put it on social media where it spread like wildfire. People who were smashing up the mosques themselves said that they were doing it because of those social media claims. As mentioned before, it was actually a Christian Welsh guy who stabbed the 3 girls. But this didn't stop people from smashing up Muslim-owned businesses, smashing up and burning mosques, using anti-Muslim chants, assaulting Muslims, or lighting asylum hotels and centres, with live human beings, including children, inside of them. This also led to riots in Northern Ireland. However, they've had added difficulties due to the strengthening tensions between the Protestants and the Catholics, even leading to some kids referring to each other as the enemy. Some kids started using social media to organise fights between Catholics and Protestants, which got increasingly violent and increasingly frequent until police and youth workers had to step in. In Kenya, coordinated hashtags were used to drown out political conversations and incite violence. In Ethiopia, online troll farms have been reportedly posing as members of different ethnic groups to stir up conflict. Amnesty International found that Facebook's algorithms supercharged the spread of harmful content which targeted Tigrayans in the 2020 to 2022 war that killed up to an estimated 800,000. Honestly, I can spend the next 3 hours giving examples. In each case, no single person gave a direct order. They didn't have to. When you feed a narrative of existential crisis to a large enough group, it becomes a statistical certainty that someone will act. There is no such thing as a lone wolf. They're just the most dedicated member of the group. This is what is known as stochastic terrorism. When a figure or ideology demonizes another group relentlessly, creating a statistical certainty that somebody will eventually become radicalized enough to act violently, without a direct order ever being given. In the Charlie Kirk case, we can see that his social media and internet presence was a very big reason in his targeting. We still don't know the full story on his shooter, but allegedly mentions of Kirk's hatred and extremism were given as to why his shooter decided to target him. And this isn't really an isolated incident. Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh was also almost assassinated in 2022 following the leaked Supreme Court decision on abortion. Nancy Pelosi's husband, Paul Pelosi, was also attacked with a hammer by someone who broke into their home. Minnesota's state Democratic representative Melissa Hortman and her husband were shot and killed literally on the same day another Minnesota State Senator John Hoffman and his wife were shot 17 times. A January 6th rioter was live streaming himself outside of Obama's house whilst he had his guns off him before he got arrested. Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro had his mansion set ablaze while his family were inside. These examples are just the tip of the iceberg. All of these people had very strong influence from social media, which was the main culprit in their radicalization. None of them had someone explicitly order them to carry this out, but they were just radicalized enough to do so. To show an example, listen to the story of a 21-year-old Norwegian man, Philip Manshaus, who very quickly got radicalized on the internet. He developed open neo-Nazi views after just 1 year on the internet. He loved his adopted Chinese sister very much. However, after he got radicalized, he told his sister that she and her boyfriend should not have children because it would be race mixing, and said that she was not his sister because to be his sister, she would have to be human. This was just after 1 year of internet radicalization. Philip Manshaus had attempted to shoot up a mosque in Norway, but he got beat up by some of the Muslim elders before he could shoot any of the worshippers. He only managed to kill his own sister before he left for the mosque by shooting her 4 times, including in the face, with a rifle. In an interview he did in prison, he admitted this. There are a lot of different ways to get the views I have. Some people, for example, read books, for example, Mein Kampf, or another fascist literary work, and then in a period of maybe 5 to 15 years come to a conclusion that things may not be as they were brought up to believe. Going through the process as I did goes significantly faster. I only spent a year, maybe 1.5 years, to get my views on society, and it really represents the internet as like a superhighway for ideas, in which ideas and opinions can be shared so fast as we have never seen before. I can safely say that the main actor in my political upheaval was the internet. This man went from a loving, caring relationship with the sister that he was raised with to not even seeing her as human and killing her in just 1 year. He admitted that 15 years of fascist literature like Mein Kampf was equal to 1 year on the internet. That is how effective internet radicalization is. Even the Christchurch shooter admits he was radicalized on the internet, with his YouTube recommendation algorithm serving as a key radicalizer. He claimed in his manifesto that it would be impossible any other way. The same is true for the Charlie Kirk shooter. He was described by his friends as being terminally online, a massive user of Discord, and showed patterns of worrying social media radicalization. Can ban guns or protect persecuted groups, but that's just treating the application of violence, not fighting the actual cause. We are still not acknowledging how these social media companies are knowingly creating extremist and massive social division because they profit off it. It's a nice comforting idea to think of the shooter as a lone wolf, to shield us from trying to think about how he came about to be and solving the problem. But we know he's not a lone wolf, and we also know that he's the symptom of the problem, not the problem itself. And it's not just sporadic extremist attacks. In Myanmar, Facebook was the main tool for military and Buddhist nationalists, monks, politicians, actors, and militias to spread disinformation about the Rohingya, a Muslim minority of around 2.5%. Facebook became the de facto internet as the country opened up. Fake news would spread of an attack supposedly done by a Rohingya or an assault on a woman, completely unverified. It would go viral on Burmese Facebook, and then the Burmese majority would retaliate by burning down shops or attacking Rohingya. The military, known as the Tatmadaw, was one of the main actors creating a network of fake accounts and pages, and even paid for ads to run a fake news to spread dehumanizing anti-Rohingya propaganda. These fears were especially stoked by a monk called Ashin Wirathu, known as the face of Buddhist terror, and self-described as the Burmese Osama bin Laden. He'd call the Rohingya dogs, rapists, savages who need to be exterminated. He called them African for some reason. Claimed that sexual violence from Muslims against Buddhists was widespread in every town in Myanmar, without providing any evidence. The Rohingya made up around 2.5% of the country and were significantly poorer than the national average. They also lived under somewhat of an apartheid regime. Despite this, Wirathu claimed that the Rohingya were planning to take over Burma, one of the poorest, weakest, most oppressed people, all spread via disinformation. Even after Wirathu got banned from Facebook for hate speech, a video of him amassed 70% of his views through Facebook's chaining feature, which automatically plays recommended videos one after the other. The algorithm, in its never-ending pursuit of engagement, was still promoting the content of a known hate preacher. This all severely impacted public opinion. Remember that for most Burmese people, Facebook was the internet. And now you have these extremist groups spreading fake news and paying for ads to spread hatred against this minority. All this time, Facebook had just one content moderator for the over 20 million Burmese Facebook users, who was based in Dublin. And they just spoke Burmese, one of the many languages used in Burma. They had effectively zero safeguards for Burmese content, and they knew it. Facebook was warned about how dangerous their algorithm was for the Rohingya people as far back as 2012 multiple times. Even Facebook's own internal studies, also in 2012, showed that it was aware of this problem, yet chose to do nothing as they were prioritizing profits. This all paved the way for the ongoing Rohingya genocide, which has so far killed almost 50,000 people and forced over 700,000 people to neighboring Bangladesh, creating the world's largest refugee camp. The UN said that Facebook was a useful instrument for those seeking to spread hate and played a determining role in the genocide. Amnesty said that Facebook's own algorithms substantially contributed, proactively amplified, and supercharged the spread of anti-Rohingya content, precisely because it was so inflammatory and therefore highly engaging. Posts that were reported for inciting violence were ignored or rejected, with the automated response saying they did not violate community standards, with only 2% of hate speech having been removed as of 2019. What we find is that Facebook, a single privately owned foreign-based platform, became the primary source news of communication and social interaction for an entire nation. It actively and knowingly promoted hateful content as it was more profitable, and also allowed fake news to run as ads, despite knowing it was dangerous. And they also had basically no moderation over the Burmese market. Facebook has refused to pay any reparations for the Rohingya people, a community whose requests, as Amnesty notes, represents crumbs from the table of the company's enormous profits. Okay, but what can we do? How can we fix this? Can the social media platforms be changed? The Stop Hateful Profit campaign in 2020 showed how advertisers could pressure these companies, such as Meta. 500 companies joined the boycott, such as Target and Starbucks, leading to an 8% drop in Facebook stock. There were modest results, such as the creation of several new positions in Facebook to monitor these issues. New policies were also implemented. However, these changes are mostly cosmetic. Hate and fake news removal has gone down since the boycott, removing only 3 million pieces of hate speech in Q2 2025, compared to its peak of more than 31 million in 2021. You cannot run a machine that profits from pure rage and creates extremists and expect the world outside the screen to remain unharmed. Debate it, dunk it, defend it, you're still feeding the algorithm. This fails to address both the algorithm that feeds the content as well as the social polarization and extremism at large. Once more, my video about the impending American Civil War shows the decades-long political and media pressures that have shaped public opinion, as well as how people's lives are getting materially worse over time, largely thanks to neoliberal economics. The algorithm mostly doesn't create hate out of nothing, it just severely amplifies it. If everyone's lives and media literacy were doing well, this wouldn't get very far. But back to the algorithm. We know that it can be changed. Hate speech and use of slurs spiked after Musk bought Twitter, and it did not go back down. We know how much grok has been changed whenever Elon Musk just decides he wants to. A blatant example is when it just spoke about white genocide in South Africa non-stop regardless of whatever it was asked. The Chinese version of TikTok, Douyin, is also completely different from the Western version, all because of how the CCP influences it.
In their version of TikTok, if you're under 14 years old, they show you science experiments you can do at home, museum exhibits, patriotism videos, and educational videos. And they also limit it to only 40 minutes per day. Now, they don't ship that version of TikTok to the rest of the world. So it's almost like they recognize that technology is influencing kids' development, and they make their domestic version a spinach version of TikTok, while they ship the opium version to the rest of the world. US and China asking, what is the most aspirational career that you want to have? And the US, the number one was influencer.
Social media influencer.
And in China, the number one was astronaut. Again, you allow those two societies to play out for a few generations, I can tell you what your world is going to look like.
We know how doable it is to change the algorithm to prioritize certain things. It all comes down to just, do they want the algorithm to change? And when I say they, I mean literally like 6 people. New attempts by YouTube to use AI to fight extremism content and recommendations did show signs of improvement, although it is quite far from perfect. But it shows how these platforms have the ability to deploy new tools to fight extremism. YouTube also started demonetizing videos that spread harmful ideas and misinformation, such as anti-vax videos. WhatsApp implemented restrictions for users in India, such as only being able to forward a message 5 times, limits on group sizes and forwarding restrictions, as well as using AI to remove 6 million accounts that spread fabricated news. Reddit saw a massive drop in hate speech from users who frequented hateful subreddits after the subreddits were banned. The users didn't just migrate somewhere else and become as hateful. They just adapted to the new environment and became less toxic and extreme. The goal here wasn't to kick people off of these platforms, but to prevent them from coalescing in their own extremist groups, as when they're in their own echo chambers, that's when extremism thrives. Mark Zuckerberg, Sundar Pichai, Elon Musk, they are not your friends. Those people and any other CEO would happily let society burn to the ground and have everyone at each other's throats if it meant an extra 12% boost to the stock price and the net worth goes up. A former Facebook product manager said that there was a conflict of interest between what was good for the public and what was good for Facebook. And Facebook, over and over again, chose to optimize for its own interests. like making more money. It's clear that these companies won't act alone. The European Commission opened formal proceedings against Twitter in December 2023 over risk management, content moderation, and transparency. And more enforcement escalated in 2024 to 2025, with potential fines. This is the leading structural push to make hate amplification financially unattractive. But frankly, I don't really trust any of these governments right now to enact any of these policies, and definitely not with the right intentions. So I'm not sure how we can reach a solution. Maybe a big lawsuit on behalf of these human rights organization groups and the victims they represent. Maybe a big campaign to disconnect from social media, which I think would be really needed. If Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, Sundar Pichai, or anyone else came to you and said, I'm going to make you guys more depressed, more anxious, less trusting of your institutions, believe in fake news, waste hours of your day scrolling, make your health worse, both mental and physical, destroy your brain with endless scrolling and race to the bottom for low quality brain rot, destroy the social bonds that keep you cohesive and functioning, and make you guys become so extreme that you don't just hate each other, but are actively planning on how to kill each other. Would we be okay with allowing that kind of platform to stay the way it was? Would we be okay with giving them that much power?